Welcome to Impact Farming, where we introduce you to the people and ideas that will have a massive impact on your farming operation. Brought to you by Farm Marketer. Sit down, start the engine, and let's roll with today's show.
With an ever-increasing demand for potassium due to increasing crop yields, there is a need for a better source of potassium with improved availability and uptake potential. Alpine K-Tech is the most plant-available form of potassium and is able to enter the plant quickly and easily. As a foliar application, K-Tech is tank mixable with many crop protection products, thereby increasing the grower's resource use efficiency. K-Tech offers balanced fertility and an added energy source for the plant. The latest development of premium crop nutrition is doing a lot more with a lot less for your crops. Learn more at www.alpinepfl.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Impact Farming Show. Today, we have a fantastic guest with us. We have Sandy Russell. Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
I am so excited. We've been working on this for quite some time, and I must say, the world we're living in is a little bit different than when we first started talking about this episode.
Is it ever? It was... when I first got excited about coming and visiting with you, it was a completely different environment that we were going to be talking about. So I'm still excited, but different times and unique times, boy.
Yeah, I am really excited to have Sandy on. Sandy is going to be chatting with us about the beef markets. And before we hop into all the good stuff, can you tell our audience a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm a partner in Spring Creek Consulting. It's a consulting firm based in central Saskatchewan, and we focus mainly on the beef and forage sectors. That's our niche and where we love. We do venture into other areas of agriculture, but we are an agriculture-based firm and love and are very passionate about the beef industry. And so our firm offers everything from project management services and research management to market analysis, strategic planning, governance structures, things like that. So we do a vast majority of things, but like I said, mainly for ag-based clients. And our main focus is in the beef sector and forage sectors.
I love it. Myself and Anthony, we are cattle farmers in Southeast Manitoba, so near and dear to my heart. And that's actually where I first heard you speak. And you did such a fantastic job talking about the crazy markets back then.
What little did I know, huh?
Yeah, it's funny what I don't even want to say it, the new normal. I'm not saying it. I said it. But
so I'm going to try not to say that, okay?
Yeah, let's not. I think that's been a little bit overused. So I know there's so much uncertainty. It's almost unfair to even ask you what the future holds. But cow-calf guys, feedlot, those guys, what are we looking at 2020, 2021? Are there any chats about that?
Yeah, well, I like to throw my 2 bits into everything. So I'll gladly give you my 2 bits. But I don't have a crystal ball. That's the first thing. And anybody who's heard me talk has heard me say that if I had one, I would be making money off this whole situation. But so it's just, at this stage, I think the big thing is look at what's potential, what's the opportunity to, if life gets slowly back to some kind of level of semblance of normal, what does that look like for your business and for what you're marketing? And so that's the approach I always take to things when we've been through, unfortunately, I can speak through being through crises before. And oftentimes you want to plan for the worst, but hope for the best. And I think that's the motto I've always lived by in terms of marketing is I want to be prepared for that worst case scenario and try to structure your business and help people structure their business for that, but also hope that we get through it much better than we do. And oftentimes I find somewhere in the middle is where you end up. So when we look out, coming into 2020, there was a lot of optimism about the beef industry. And that's kind of like sometimes late at night, I sit and go, darn, that was looking like it was really going to be a good market. Demand was really strong. I mean, we'd come through 2019 better than we thought we would have for one singular reason, I think, or one main reason, and that was the strong demand. And beef was not just North America, but globally, but really in North America, we were seeing strong product movement, and we had large supplies. We needed that. And I had talked about that need to keep strong demand and watch where demand would go through 2020, because we still had large supplies to deal with. So as we get through this and find out what life's like on the other side, the key factor, always the basics, are supply and demand, and watching, does that demand return? We saw those initial meat flying off the shelves and everybody's filling their freezers, and because we're in uncharted territory, and people always need food. That's the good thing about being in agriculture and being an essential service, is no matter what, we have to eat. So we have to find a way to get food on the table. And so what demand looks like on the other side is the big question. As we look at a shift from, we've seen this shift from restaurant eating and food service to, the grocery store and retail. And that's a change in the kind of cuts that consumers buy, because what we consume at the restaurant is not typically what we purchase in the grocery store. And so those shifts, are those going to stay? Are people going to go back? I mean, we're ending towards the end of May, and we've got dates here in Saskatchewan put out for June when restaurants will gradually start to open. The restaurant trade is really feeling I feel for a lot of people through this, but I really feel for small restaurants and food service, because it's just been shut cold. And what does that look like? Will people go back to, I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic. I like to be optimistic, but what does the new norm look like? Oh, I used it, Tracy.
Prior to our conversation, and the new normal.
What does it look like though, right? And will products move back to kind of the way it was previously in terms of what's being consumed? So that's the one thing I think that producers and as an industry we have to look at. And the other thing, of course, is the volatility in this market. Like I said, uncertainty. We're in extreme volatility. And so the fall of 2020 really has me concerned. And I would urge producers, and I have urged everybody I talk to really think about creating as many options as you can for your marketing strategies and for your business long term, and managing your risk, because we are in an extremely high risk situation right now. And so what that fall looks like, and I think the big thing about COVID-19 is it's not just an ag-related issue, right? We've been through crisis before, but they were unique to the beef industry. Once we got through that crisis, we knew what the environment would look like globally on the other side. This is impacting every form of life and around the globe. So the uncertainty is really quite severe. And so that adds an added level of risk that I think producers need to manage and be able to, I think there's lots of opportunity to do that, but be able to create as many options as you can long term. So, from a cow-calf production level, that means most guys have calves on the ground. Those of us that are calving in pastures are still putting some calves on the ground. Buy yourself some time in your marketing strategies and your production, hopefully that you can look at various options. If the fall is really ugly, maybe you retain calves. Maybe you hold things over where you normally didn't. Looking at creating those opportunities. Now, the feedlot is a different scenario, right? Those guys are facing the biggest impact right now, and they're facing the biggest hurt. And that's why, of course, the requests and the need for support is at that level right now today. The backlog is real, and it is considerable, and so we're going to have to work our way through that, and so that factor is at the forefront of what they're dealing with right now. Long term, that they will make their buy and sell decisions down the road, but right now they're facing that. How do I deal with this backlog and get cattle moving out of the feedlots? So,
well, and as cow-calf producer, we're already doing certain management risk management practices. But one of the frustrating things too, where we're at, and different parts, different supply, but we've had a few dry years in our area. So our forage, our hay, is at the lowest we've ever had. We used to keep bales over winter to have a surplus, right? You never want to be caught short. The last 3 years, we've been nip and tuck, and we've been buying. So you're not going to buy, well, we have, but you're not going to buy 500 bales to let them sit there just to feel good. You're buying what you need to just get through. So that's the hard part too. If we were, call it 5 years back, and again, this is very local to everybody. We all have our own weather patterns, and some people are wet, but for us, if we were 5 years back, yeah, good, feed them. We'll feed them. Yeah. And you feel a little bit better. Here it's like, oh, geez, have enough. Right?
Coming off, and I don't want to say that nasty D word. We're in May, and I'm hopeful, but drought in any area adds just a completely another layer of management and struggle to cow-calf producers specifically, right? And to feed costs. And we know that is difficult to manage, and many areas have come off several years of drought. So yes, the feed supplies are at, depleted, and we're hopeful, but those are things that as producers we have to try and manage. And I guess coming off of drought years, it puts you in a very tenuous situation, right? You feel like, ooh, I don't got that carryover that I would like to have. So, those are risk factors and management things that each individual producer has to try to maneuver through, right? And it makes it even that much more challenging. Agriculture is challenging. Beef production, cattle production is challenging to begin with, and then you throw this in, and it makes it that much more complex. But that being said, there are things you can control and do, and that's always what, I go back to is from a business perspective. How do you set your business up? Unfortunately, oftentimes when people ask me is when we're in the midst of the risk, and the worst case kind of is starting to face us right in the eye. But really, long term, how do you set your business up to be prepared for these situations, right? And that's the long-term planning that I think producers need to do as we, like I said, who would have thought we'd be sitting here talking about quarantines and pandemics, right? So being prepared for those things and having a really well-structured business is critical going into these things. And I think the lesson coming out of it is how do I remember that setting this business up is important for these kinds of uncharted black swan events, that people refer to. How do we set our business up to sustain that? And I think the big thing is, focus on those things you can control. Focus on the things in your business that you can do to set up for and manage risk. At the end of the day, managing your risk and knowing your comfort level for risk is a big factor. So.
Okay, I'm going to dive into that a little bit later, but I want you to answer one question for me, if you can. Sure. And I haven't kept too close tabs on it because I'm busy enough that watching the news every day is not something I have time for or really want to do necessarily. So are we going to, with production at the levels it is now, we know it's shut down, and meat flying off the shelves, are we going to be in, what kind of situation are we going to be in coming up? Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So there's, and again, uncertainty is the name of the game, right? And because there was this initial buying frenzy, I will say, of, for consumers as there was so much uncertainty about opening and how long we'd be in a situation where we'd be in quarantine or self-isolation or whatever, in various parts of North America. And so initially we saw product just move substantially. And then as we got into that worst case scenario, like I said, where production shut down, that wasn't just a Canadian thing, that was North America. We dealt with production shutdowns. We're starting to see our way through that. So I'm a little more optimistic that meat shortages and supply shortages at the grocery store level and are going to be, hopefully we're through the worst of some of those. Okay. That being said, We hear about a second wave. We know we can run into other challenges. So, I mean, there's no way to truly know if we will. You've heard the stories and seen the reports of, able to buy limited quantities of certain things. And this isn't just unique to beef, right? I mean, all of a sudden, who knew everybody beat bacon bread all of a sudden like our grandmothers did, right? Like you can't find yeast is all I hear about. So these are things that as you see this major shift in buying patterns, the logistics of supply chains and delivery and all those factors have to come into play. And so there has been a shift happen, but I don't think from a supply perspective, we have the supply of cattle, a lot of supply of cattle, and we have, as long as the system can keep flowing, and like I said, we're gradually getting back to levels that are more normal. In Eastern Canada, their capacity right now, they're killing more than their capacity. They're doing an excellent job. So that is offsetting some other areas, and so that's helping. Right now, I don't see, knowing what we know today, I don't think we're going to be in a major shortage situation.
Okay.
But things can change quickly in this environment.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are holding their breath. I figured it would open up a lot quicker and people would be going back to work. But I was just chatting with one of my aunts who works at a big insurance company. They're all working from home, obviously. And she said they're looking at least till the end of the year, December. And when they start having individuals go back, they only want 25% of the workforce back.
Wow. Yeah.
Which, that shocked me that everybody is being that cautious. Well, heck, yeah. I don't know what in Saskatchewan, what the lingo, the language, the talk is, but they're already talking about potentially not going back to school in fall.
That's rumbling around here too. I mean, they haven't said anything officially, but people are worried about that and what that looks like, right, for the fall. And so that, I mean, how quickly we get back to things opening is really, they're being very cautious, which I'm far from judging how we should be doing that. I'm not an expert in that area, but that has implications for product movement. And if restaurants can gradually open and we get back to some regular scheduled eating out and people, consuming products that way, that's good news. And that will pull supply through. Hopefully things can keep moving, right? But we're in uncharted territory here. And like I said, it's a high risk situation. So there's so many unknowns at this point.
I felt when I reached out to you to do this episode, I felt kind of cruel. I'm like, hey, do you want to come on and chat about this and then try and predict the future?
Well, I've said to people before, you got to be really good at being wrong if you're going to be an analyst of any kind. The only thing worse, I think, is being a weather forecaster. So you got to be really, really humble in this job and know that it's just a best guess, guys. That's what I'm doing, is just looking at all the situation, looking at the numbers, and trying to give you my best advice possible.
I love it. You're so honest and genuine in that. And the other part that I loved about your presentation when I seen you at, I think it's Beef Days in Vita, Manitoba, you're just such a great speaker. You know your subject through and through. But what I really loved is where you wrap it around and you go, okay, we never know what's going to happen as we're seeing right now. Who would have expected COVID-19? We never know what's coming up in the future. And the only thing we can control is what we do in our business. And I love that message because you know what? I'm a business owner times two. And I think one of the challenging things, especially with farming, so much is out of your control. You can't plan the weather. You can't plan the moisture. You can't plan XXX. It is very easy to get overwhelmed as a business owner when you are in farming and you start looking outside at all of these things. I mean, paralysis. Sometimes you could just overwhelm yourself, right? And we talk about the mental health and the stress. It's very easy to go there. And sometimes, you know what, I say it's not even worth thinking about. You can't control it. So what I really loved about your presentation was where you brought it back and you said, okay, we can't control all of this. We're going to guess, but you can control your operation. So I would love for you to share some ideas on that and management practices that farmers can focus on to feel a little more in control.
Yeah. And I think it's back to this, setting our businesses up to sustain these uncharted, crazy crisis we unfortunately come across and are in the midst of, is how do you do that and think long term? And I think anyone who's in the cattle business understands that there's highs and there's lows, and how do you start to plan your way through that long term? And so, it's about what's your optimum production and your optimum cost in getting to that production. And so I've, back in previous days, spent a lot of time working on cost of production and the importance of understanding the economics behind your business. And I get it. I say to so many ranchers and producers that, we don't get into the cattle business because we love sitting behind a desk and calculating all the numbers and figuring out what it costs us. I get that. We get into the cattle business because we like being out in the pasture. And quite honestly, for me, this is the favorite time of year, right? Cattle are calving, cattle are going out to grass. This is what I want to be doing, not sitting behind a computer figuring out, am I going to make money on these things? That's not why you get into the cattle business. And I think that's why sometimes it's such a challenge, that side of the business for us. But it is critical, it is crucial, and it is so important to sit down and really start factoring in, okay, what's it cost me? What do I need to get through these crises? How do I manage my risk? I've often said to producers, if I don't know what it costs me to produce a pound of calf, I cannot even begin to make any kind of decision for my business. And so until I know that one variable, and I understand that it's challenging to, I've been at the kitchen table where the shoe boxes come out. It can be overwhelming and a real huge undertaking to get to that number. But as you start the process of getting to that number, you understand your business better. And so it's so critical. It is so critical to do that work and put that energy into those things. So, at times where you maybe don't want to look at what the markets are doing, and if you don't have to be marketing for 6 months, I would strongly urge you, don't look at the cattle market right now, because it's probably better for your health and your business. And spend your time sitting figuring out, what did it cost me last year? What were, maybe I haven't done that look back and reassessment of where was I last year and how did this business perform? And not just, so many times it's, books have to be done for income tax, or books have to be done for this, right? Really look at the production side and the economics behind, is your business making money? And what can we do? Where can we make some improvements on the management side? So, that's genetics, that's feeding. Are we doing everything we can to create an optimal production for the optimal cost situation, right? We know many of us, I'm with you, Tracy, have felt drought in recent years. So how do we survive through those factors, right? And what's our plan going forward? Those are things we can impact. I can't change whether the plants can keep running or not. I cross my fingers and I hope. I can't change how fast the feedlots get through this backlog of cattle and if they're going to bid on calves in the fall and what that bid's going to look like. But I can control my cost side of the business. I can control my production and think long term. How much risk do I want to take? Do I want to manage my risk? What's it going to cost me to manage my risk? Do I need to lay in feed? All those things. Have I maximized my production levels to a place where it's best for my business? Because the other factor is, and I could sit and say, do this or do that. No two operations are the same. I've never seen two cattle operations the same. And we all have different opportunities and challenges. And so it's spending time on those things in your business that I think really, for me, bring control back, and I can start to manage my way through those uncontrollable things.
Yeah. To be completely honest, when we first got going and building our herd and then our farm, we just flew a little bit blind, right? Because we weren't doing it in a big way. So you're going, and then you actually build a real operation, a lot of land, a lot of debt, all of that good stuff. Well, you got to get pretty real about it, because sometimes if you don't have a good set of numbers, like you said, not the shoebox for the accountant, actual financials, it is funny how many times you go, okay, well, we spend X on our vet. And you actually look and you go, oh, wow.
Right. Yeah.
The one I love and always seems to get away on us is repairs. We had a tractor, and that you don't love the tractor, but you go, okay, it's paid off, and we just put this in, and we put this, and this breaks, and it's cheaper than buying a new one. We'll just keep on repairing. And then you look at it, because once you start getting good financials, you look one year and you go, machinery repair. You look the next year and you go, oh my gosh, we need to get rid of this tractor, right? And just one decision right there is 10, 20, 30 grand. And it's power.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I just find numbers aren't fun, and they can be intimidating, but they're not. You know what? They're really one of the most black and white things in life. And I'm passionate about that. No, as producers, we don't like doing that. But once you get those numbers there and you see year to year, you're pretty consistent as an operation. And you go, okay, we can tighten up here. And same thing over the last couple of years, we go, okay, this cattle business is not as predictable as we would love for it to be. Yeah. How do we make sure that we get our costs down so that no matter what comes and goes, we can go, okay, our cost per calf is this. Yeah. Break even is this. Let's not plan for $1,200 a calf. Let's maybe plan for $1,000 or whatever the case is, right? But that's
and
where.
I think
go ahead.
It's being able to do that planning and have that, grasp of your production and your numbers that helps make those decisions when we get into times like this, right? So, these are those, difficult, challenging decision-making times. And I think the fall is, hopefully I'm wrong, but there's a high risk we're going to be in some interesting times right through to the fall. And so that's going to be challenging decisions for producers at the cow-calf level. And so how are you setting yourself up to make those decisions and have some options when it comes to decision-making time?
Are you concerned? And I almost don't even want to ask the question, but it's so negative now.
I'm bracing myself.
Yeah, brace yourself, Sandy. But you hear a lot of talk that this COVID-19 might be the final straw for a lot of beef farmers.
That's a concern. I mean, and I've had a lot of flashbacks to a time, and this is a word I also didn't want to use in this interview, but flashbacks to, let's say maybe 17 years ago that the beef industry went through, and the impact that had on our industry long term. And I think this is a worse situation, quite frankly. I hate to say that, but it is a more severe impact, I think. Yeah. And so for producers, it definitely is going to be a challenge. And my advice back then and my advice now has not changed. Be on top of your numbers. Be in contact with your financial advisors and all your team of experts to help you get through this, because make use of every risk management and support program that you can to help sustain your business through. This is not a normal kind of hiccup in the business. This is a pandemic globally. So you're in some very, very challenging situations, and the long-term impact we don't know. So again, I like to be optimistic, but I'm also a realist, and I think it's critical that producers sooner rather than later put that planning in place, have those conversations, be realistic about your business so that you can hopefully sustain yourself. But it could be very challenging for many, many operations. And like you mentioned, some have come through droughts, buying feed. It has not, I mean, we can look at the market side and say, well, 2019, we came through better, but markets do not mean profit for producers necessarily. And just because, I pencil out an average doesn't mean everybody was able to capture that positive return. So that's where planning through your own business and utilizing the expertise of, like I said, financial advisors, accountants, all those people who are there on your team, which I strongly urge producers to have that strong team around them to help them through, because we can't be experts in everything. There's just no way. So utilize those resources. And we saw it the last time around, and I will say again, I'm confident that the vast majority of people want to help you get through this. And so use that help. It's okay to use that help to get through it.
Yeah. And, I always say that farming is a very isolated profession to begin with. And it's very easy to just be at home and doing your thing. And you don't want to reach out because you don't want to seem weak or like you don't know it all. My goodness. Big businesses have multiple people for each role, right? And farmers put a lot of unneeded stress on themselves, thinking they need to be the know-it-all in every single area, right?
Yeah, and I mean, we're independent people. That I think that's kind of the nature. If I was to generalize, I hate to generalize people, but if I look at as a group, we're pretty independent, and I myself, I know I struggle to have to ask for help, but there are areas that I need to ask for help in, right? And so that's important, that the sooner you start looking at some of those numbers, and sometimes they're ugly. Don't get me wrong. I know, I've been there. It's not fun to look at, but it's not going to go away by ignoring it. So let's face it early on and try to do everything we can to manage our way through it.
I heard something very clever because I like psychology and I read a lot and all of that kind of stuff. I just love that stuff. I heard something clever. Our biggest strength can also be our biggest weakness. So I firmly believe that farmers can exist as a farmer and continue to exist because we're independent. Fantastic. I don't think you can farm otherwise, just due to the nature of the business. But then on the flip side, because we're so independent, that
yeah,
I felt it too in my business, right? No, I should know that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. Those are some great management practices, and I love that you continue to hammer those points home, right? If you don't know your numbers.
Yeah, it's so critical. I mean, and before this is just, we're in the midst of that coming to light and really showing that how important that is. But that being said, if you haven't done it, don't think, oh, it's too late. I can't do it. So let's throw our hands up and just go back to the pasture and feed cows. It always pays off. It always pays dividends to be on top of that business whenever you dig into it. And so spending a little bit of time working away at it will always pay off, I say to producers. And it's so critical to know those numbers. And going into the fall, if the uncertainty continues and the volatility challenges continue, that will only help you. The more you know, the better off you will be to make those decisions. So now is the time, and I can't. I know people probably get sick of me saying it, but I just can't imagine managing the business without understanding that cost side and the numbers of your operation.
And I have another weird saying here. The business part of it can not be very sexy to people, right? It's the part they don't like. But honestly, I find that is one of the sexy parts of the business, because once you know your numbers, it's power, right?
It's power, yeah.
And
it absolutely is.
I can't believe I just used the word sexy with farm business management.
It is. I just about said when you said numbers aren't fun, what are you talking about? Because, I love numbers, but I fully understand. I am not the norm. But it is power.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It gives you power, and back to this, what is uncontrollable and how overwhelming this business can be in normal times, let alone in these global pandemic times. It gives you power in your business, and it to me, it just brings a whole level of able to have comfort, able to sleep at night. I like to sleep at night and not be totally stressed out. And so it brings that whole level to the business and an understanding of how to make some decisions and where you can improve. Because again, I said there's never two the same. There's never been an operation where I can't sit down, including my own today, where I can improve things. Where if I dig into the numbers, here's the first thing I'd start at, here's second, here's where we need to put our energy, because here's our greatest return on our investment. If we put our time and our energy and our money here, we can change or improve this area. There's always room for improvement. And so you don't know if you're doing, making those best management decisions until you really find that baseline, right? And the first year is always the hardest. That's what I tell producers. It's terrible. Don't quit, because you've done the hard stuff after year one. You've got that baseline, and it only gets better and better as you move through the years and really track kind of what your operation is doing.
I was speaking to a financial consultant one time, actually listening to their webinar, and I was chatting with him about it after, and he said often a lot of the mental health issues and the lack of sleep at night is because people don't know their numbers. It's all a big cloud. There's so much uncertainty, and exactly just like you said, the first year is horrible. Getting it in, getting all the numbers together, looking at it, going, oh my gosh, right? Yeah. But then from there, that's your starting point. You go, okay, we're spending way too much. What can we do? Oh, geez, maybe I shouldn't buy that quad cash for 10 grand. Those things make a big difference. So, okay.
I would say too, just one final comment is it can be very intimidating and overwhelming in that, back to that shoebox. Cause I say it jokingly, but let's all be real here. Like a lot of us, that pile sits there, right? And it becomes overwhelming, but start somewhere. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing, right? You don't have to do the complete analysis and have the Cadillac right off the bat. Start somewhere, and maybe it's factoring in your feed or costs or figuring out one piece operation costs. And let's not worry about some of those more challenging, difficult cost side of the business. Let's just start with operations. And so start somewhere, and don't think it's got to be all or nothing, right?
Love it. Baby steps.
Yeah.
Steps. Okay. I think that about covers management practice, right? Get your numbers.
There's always more, but I think, like I said, there's never, and I'm calling myself out on this too. There's always room for improvement, and until you sit down and really take that critical look at your business, it's hard to know where to spend your time and your energy on making improvements.
I agree. Same thing. This computer right here, I have a set of financials for the farm I need to review yet, and it's sitting there. So amen to that. Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit, because we can control those pieces of our operation, right? And that's a great place to take action, right? And I also find if you can find something, if you're feeling overwhelmed in life, and you're just sitting there and you don't know what to do, I always say just take action, one step, and then you start to get momentum and you feel good. It's that sitting there spinning, feeling like you have no control. That's a horrible feeling. So we have the business management, the financial end, but you also speak a lot about risk management tools. Can you please touch on that? Because this episode right here that we're recording is part of, I don't even know how many weeks we're going to be, probably about 7-8 weeks that I have spent focusing on all the different risk management programs, including, financial management, AgriInvest, AgriStability. I'm going to be doing crop insurance, hail insurance, price insurance. Yes, that's how important I feel this is. So I've taken the better part of 2 months to focus on this. So I know you're a big advocate for those programs. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, I think, and back to my comment about use the resources we have for us. I don't like risk. If I could find a way to avoid any risk in my life, I'm just that kind of person. And so the first thing I always tell people is find the level of risk you're comfortable with. Now, I know some people might laugh at me and say, you're in the cattle business and you don't like risk? Like, what's that about? But if you looked at me, relatively speaking, I'm a low risk kind of person. And I think the first thing is to understand the comfort level you have with risk. We all have a different level of risk we're comfortable with, back to wanting to sleep at night. But I also think too, when we look at our businesses and we know, from year to year and the challenges and the uncontrollable factors that we face, we have to take a realistic and common sense view to managing that risk we face. And so I'm a strong proponent of exploring risk management. And that's not just in the formal programs or, that piece. But also, to me, risk management is knowing my business. Risk management is being educated in where I'm at with my business and how I need to improve, and keeping up to date on the innovation and the opportunities in the industry, and all that piece, to me, is risk management as well. But then you go into, okay, I want to know the markets. I want to know and understand. And that really is how I got to where I am today, because I wanted to understand what's driving these markets and not just hear forecasts, but really understand the factors that could change things going forward. And so when I talk to producers about everybody wants to know, what do you think calves are going to be worth? Well, that's just Sandy Russell's opinion based on sitting and watching some factors. But I'd rather tell you, and I'll give you, like I said, I'll always give you my 2 bits, but I will give you, more importantly, what factors to watch, what could change or make it wrong going down the road. Because the minute we close this session, especially today, so I'm going to find out what all the dinging and beeping is on my phone, and things will have changed, right? And so it's more important to understand how those drivers impact the market. And then what can I do to try to take out some of those uncertainty and that impact? If I can set a floor price for my calves going into the fall, why wouldn't I do that? If that can be done in a cost-effective way, now that's the variable, right? If I can do that in a cost-effective way, and it gives me comfort, it gives stability to my business, it can get me through another completely unpredictable year, then I think I need to explore that option and look at that opportunity.
And so it's all price insurance.
Yeah, things like price insurance for sure I think are extremely valuable tools that I think producers, it can be intimidating, it can be overwhelming. You get those tables, and if you get them daily, you look at that table, and even I go, oh, okay, get your head back into what is this, where, what, huh? And so it can be intimidating and overwhelming. And oftentimes I think that's when people throw up their hands, because some of these programs, AgriStability, AgriInvest, they all have their challenges. They all have, you got to sit down and learn it, or get on the phone and talk to somebody, or pay somebody to understand it for you. All those, mm-hmm. there is challenges to it. But that being said, I think it's valuable to explore those programs and look at what they can do for you. And price insurance for me is one of those big things that, as an industry, I was back there in the days when we fought for it. And I think it's very, very valuable. I would like to see it cross Canada. I'm assuming we'll have producers that watch cross Canada. And I feel for those who don't have it. And I know the industry is lobbying hard for it to be a cross-Canada program. But for those that do have it as an option, I did back in January, but today as well, I strongly urge producers to explore it, because it is meant for exactly what we're going through right now, is to create a level of price that you can be assured of in unprecedented crisis, and so help sustain your business through that. And so price insurance is why the industry has pushed so hard to try to create some support there. And it's been extended. That's the other thing on the calf side. Many cow-calf producers look at the calf policy, and so they have till June 18th now. Normally it would wrap up the end of May, but it's been extended to give some more time. So I strongly urge producers. And like I said, I know it can be intimidating. It really is and I don't say this to make people feel like, oh, I should know it. Once you dig in and ask the questions and start to get your head, it's a very easy to understand program. But sometimes we have a hard time I have a hard time asking for help. Sometimes we have a hard time saying, I don't understand price insurance.
Right? Even, I like to be vulnerable, and I know that I can't know it all. But when you're reading something, it's just human nature, or somebody's telling you something, you almost feel like you're 5 years old again, and you don't like, okay, I'm not going to say anything. That's an uncomfortable feeling. Right. But you know what?
Yeah. I think producers sometimes feel like I should know this.
Yeah.
But back to, we all can't know everything. I mean, there's things in beef production and management side. And I always laugh. I have a partner that's an expert in forage. I know nothing about grass. I am farthest thing from a grass forage expert, and I go to her when I have questions, right? She's that person. And so it's about being able to ask the questions. And so I urge producers to ask the question. Don't expect to understand it or feel intimidated that it's complicated, because until you ask the questions and really dig into it, it can be intimidating and complicated, but it really isn't. And like I said, it's very flexible. It's been designed well. I think it's a good program for the industry to have. And so I always urge producers, because uptake up to this point hasn't been great. And I think it really is a tool we should be looking at, even outside of today, but definitely today. It's a tool. And the cost has definitely gone up. It is dependent on volatility. And so when markets are volatile, insurance is more expensive. That's just, I hate to be critical of our industry, but sometimes we need to be we need to learn from our mistakes. You don't buy the fire insurance when the house is burning.
Amen.
And right now we're trying to buy the price insurance when the house is burning, and it's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you. And so that's the challenge we're in right now.
And go ahead.
The program that is meant to be an insurance program. And the other thing is so many people have gotten caught up, and I do too, in looking at the chart and that top line on the chart, and what's the maximum I can insure, and how much is it going to cost me? And I missed it yesterday, or I need to get that best price for the highest. And I get that. That's our competitive nature, I guess. But there's other levels in that chart. You don't have to insure the highest level. And you also don't have to insure everything. You can insure a portion and a portion of your calf crop, back to what level of risk can your business sustain, and are you comfortable sustaining? And if you know that, then you go to the price insurance program and you can look at, okay, if I need to insure a higher level price, then I need to pay and consider that. But maybe I need to be in the middle of the chart, and that's good enough for our business. And so that's the piece that I think sometimes producers or all of us forget, that we need to look at all the options.
It is just the human condition and the way our brain works, right?
Yeah,
and I find I've heard you say it, I've heard a lot of other consultants say it, that the adoption and awareness and understanding of these programs just aren't there yet. And that's why I'm doing this series, because I could get great people like you on to explain. We're also going to have somebody come on and speak about price insurance too. So
yeah, which is great. And
yeah,
I think, you could, like I said to you before, Tracy, you can have more than one on price insurance. And it really isn't complicated. It's just a matter of understanding the different variables. And I think it really is a very good program for the industry to have in long term. And I'd hate to see us not have it. So it's valuable today to look at, and it was valuable before now. So, and I hope in the future producers look at it long term, because it is something that brings, can take some of that uncertainty and bring a level of stability into your business. So.
And I think it all comes down to human nature. I love that psychology part of it. Why do people do what they do and don't do? And yeah. I think where a lot of these egg programs trip people up is it's insurance. They go, well, it never pays out and I'm wasting my money. But the point is you don't want it to pay out. It is there for a crisis. And I've heard farmers say that, and that's why they don't take it. It's just like house insurance. Let's knock on wood here, but chances are our house will never burn down. But I guarantee every one of us carry insurance, and it's just status quo.
Yeah.
Here, you know what? I'm a big believer. Agra Invest, Agra Stability. We do price insurance on our farm. Those three, absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't want any of them to pay out because that means it got very bad. But you know what? It's that cradle to catch you so that you don't fall right on the ground when it goes bad. And I hear a lot of people I'll flip over to Agra Stability. They go, it's a waste. It never pays off. It balances out. But our farm, we've been doing it, I'm going to say 5 years. I don't know, something like that. And because of drought mainly and having to sell animals and buy hay, that program has come through for us in such a big way. The payouts we have got, and I won't say numbers, but the payouts we have received have paid for our program enrollment for the rest of our lives. And if we had grandchildren, probably into theirs.
Yeah.
The fact is it was very bad over there to get that big of a payout. But you know what? For less than $1,000 we each pay to be in, that payout allowed us to buy feed to make sure that we didn't have to sell our animals. So I am a firm believer and shout from the rooftops, do you want it to pay out? No. But when you need it, it's there.
I think that's the important thing that, to remind producers that, especially on price insurance, if there's no payout, that means the market is strong. You're getting that value out of the market. And so, yes, it costs you money. It's an insurance program. But there was some very reasonable, it was very reasonable insurance at times. Now, again, we're in a volatile market, so it's a bit better, than it has been, but it's costly right now. But that being said, it's worth exploring. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there are opportunities to improve these programs. I'm the first, to say we need to improve Agra Stability. There's areas we can improve it, and I'm a strong proponent of that, especially for the livestock and the mixed operations.
Yeah.
But that being said, and governments have a way of loving to make these programs complicated. I think we could simplify a few things, but they are there, and looking and exploring the potential for utilizing them in your business is very important. I think you'd be remiss not to explore all the tools in your toolbox, and these are things that are available to you, and you should explore in your business.
I agree wholeheartedly. Okay, that was great. I got you to chat about where we're at, supply, demand, management practices, and risk management. Do you have anything else that you want to add? Otherwise, I'll get you to give some words of encouragement to our audience.
Well, I think that as an industry, we're a strong industry. There's a lot of optimism coming into 2020, and like I said, I sometimes cry at night when it was going to be a good year, and then this all broke loose. But I think we can't forget that there will be another side of this. We will come through this, and we are a strong industry, and I believe in the potential of the beef industry in Canada to be even stronger in the years to come, and it's why I'm so passionate about it. People love beef and love Canadian beef, and they're going to keep eating it, and so that gives me all the reason to be optimistic long-term for our industry and keep driving forward in saying, you know what, this is a good business to be in, and there's tons of potential and opportunity. So I will continue to say the cattle business is the best business that I can think of to be involved in. It's challenging. Don't get me wrong. I'm not naive. It's challenging. But long term, there still is lots of reason to be optimistic about beef production and cattle production in Canada. And so I go back to that as we get through this all together. We will come out the other side and be stronger for it. I said something the other day, and I didn't really realize it till, I said I've had some flashbacks back to the last time the cattle industry went through some major hiccups. And those flashbacks, I look back and I go, I learned the most I ever learned about the cattle business, about our resiliency, about business structure, about how to get through crisis, all kinds of areas. I learned the most in that period of time. It's hard to know that and appreciate that when you're in the midst of it. But I'm really being, I guess, as I get wiser and spend more time, more years in this industry, I'm cognizant that we are learning a lot about our industry. And take this opportunity to learn about the industry and learn about the other sectors. And one of the things I've always been critical of is we stay isolated in our little areas, cow-calf producers, feedlots, and we don't work together and we don't understand each other's business as well as we probably should, because they are very different components. Mm-hmm. The packing sector, retail, all that. We like to say the other guy has it easier off, or the other guy's making more money and point fingers, but we're all in this together, really. And as an industry, understanding the complete supply chain is so critical. And I think it really has brought that to light. This whole situation has really brought it to light. And I would urge producers to, focus on those things, learn more about your industry and what you're trying to do in your business. And unfortunately, crisis really tests us, but also really challenges us to rise to the occasion. And I'm confident we're going to rise to the occasion. I'm seeing it already. This industry is resilient. It's coming through better. Like I said, this week we've seen markets perform. We've seen the East rise up and kill more cattle than I ever thought they could in this time period. They're pulling cattle out of the West. That is good news for Canada and for Canadian beef producers. There's a lot of reason to believe we can come through this and see the other side and be optimistic long term. So I think we're a very resilient industry, and unfortunately it's testing us again. I wish it didn't, but we're going to come out the other side and we're going to be stronger for it.
Those are amazing words of wisdom. It's so easy when we're in the middle of this to forget that it is going to end, right? It's going to end. So thanks for sharing that. I feel better. I did a deep breath as you said that. So I can imagine.
And like I said, I always say this to people, I'll leave my number when I'm completely wrong and you can call me up. You can cry over how wrong I was.
That's fine. So I want to give a little shout out to you and your business again. And if farmers are watching the episode, listening to the episode, and they want to connect with you, what ways do you work with farmers, or are you willing to take calls? I just want to give you a little shout out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love chatting with farmers, and I'm always willing to take calls, and I don't charge by the hour or anything. I'm always open to a phone call and a discussion. So feel free to give me a call. Feel free. We have a website, springcreekconsulting.ca, has all our contact information on there, but feel free to give me a call. And Tracy, I don't know if you have my number and can share it with people, or I can share it as well. And I'm happy to have, pardon?
I'll put it in the show notes. Sorry to interrupt.
Excellent. I'll be happy to answer any questions and calls. Like I said, I truly believe in the potential of our industry, and so I'm always happy to talk to producers. I learn more, I think, interacting with producers than sometimes I offer them. So feel free to give me a shout. And there's lots of experts, consultants, advisors, financial advisors, experts in the programs, the government's industry experts, all those people. I always help direct people to, depending on their business and where they need the expertise and the resources. I'm happy to help that as well. So hopefully I can help direct. Time-wise, I don't do a lot of one-on-one consulting anymore just because life is busy. And so I don't take on new clients one-on-one. And I work with a lot of larger organizations now. So, but that being said, don't be afraid to call and ask questions, and I'll point you in the direction of where I think the resources can help you and people can help you out. So, happy to chat with producers always.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Sandy. I appreciate that because it is sometimes hard to know where to go, right? Especially just reaching out and starting the process. Where do you start, right? So
it is overwhelming, and I think it's lacking in our industry, quite honestly, to have the resources for that. So too, I think that's an area, a gap we have to fill from an industry perspective, is having more people who can help provide the expertise to the industry.
You're right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciated having you on. I was so excited for, what is it, almost, we're in May? 5 months I've been excited to chat with you. And it was as good as I thought it would have been. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Tracy. It's been a blast and pleasure getting to know you and meet you in Manitoba. I always love getting out to Manitoba and doing Beef Weekend. I always meet lots of wonderful producers. So it was a pleasure to meet you, and thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. And I'm hoping I'm going to see you in person in January, if live events are a thing in January.
We can actually, That's, I think, one of the biggest. I mean, I am more comfortable talking about the markets than whether or not I think I can actually go out in person in January to talk to people. But that's the uncertain part of all of this. And I think back to that whole, it's not just a beef industry. It's not just an ag industry issue. Yeah. It is a global issue. And so the impacts, we don't know. We don't know what they'll be, but prepare yourself and be as on top of your business as you can.
I love it. Okay, thanks again. And thank you guys for joining us on another episode of the Impact Farming Show. See you next week. Bye.
You've been listening to Impact Farming. For more great episodes and articles designed to help you manage and grow your farming operation, head on over to farmmarketer.com. Don't forget to sign up while you're there. We will see you on the next episode.